So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Lovejuice.
The other day our producer Louis had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithm really aren't that happy if a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we decided we can text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the track Xtra. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of On the Track Extra. And in this week's episode we're carrying on from last week when Richard Muirhead, the editor of Flying Snake magazine, and I were discussing the contents of the latest issue of the magazine. And by the way, just in case you forget, this is the latest issue. It's an absolutely fantastic magazine and I recommend it to everybody. I've just realised that I actually missed out another article by dear Lois Moderman about cows behaving strangely in the Netherlands when a whole field of cows that were grazing there lifted up their heads to the sky in one direction and then ran, tails in the air, most likely scared in the other direction. So they all went and they ran away. I love these stories because if these aren't recorded and brought into the canon of Fortean literature, these things will be overlooked almost as quickly as they happen. And it's interesting that she compares this to what happened in a zoo in Emmen in the Netherlands back in the 1990s when something invisible spooked a whole troop of baboons who stayed in the trees for days, not coming down to eat, and impossible to be convinced to come down from the trees. After several days they reluctantly did, one by one, but the same thing happened to me a few years later, also without visible cause. No other animals were affected as far as I know.
This probably happens more often because a lot of the time cows or sheep are just left to do whatever they want in the field, and people are not standing around for 24 hours a day gazing into the field. People have their own lives to live, and they might take a walk through a field, but they're not going to stop for a while. It reminds me of stories of sheep standing in a circle for no apparent reason.
Yes, I found those, and there's a story which I found from somewhere in North Cornwall, for the life of me, I can't remember where it is. It was near Newquay, of a whole flock of sheep being spooked by something that appeared in the middle of the circle of sheep and then ran away again, chasing them and then ran away, and it was suggested that it was a werewolf of some description, but as far as I know, if you want to read it, it's in the Owl Man and others. But yeah. I've never heard of that story anywhere else, or anything like it, at least in Cornwall. So it's interesting.
Right. Yeah.
But now what we have, something which I think is completely dubious, but it'd be interesting to hear your take on it.
Yeah.
TV cryptozoologist Forrest Galanti, who is someone for whom I've got quite a deal of respect.
Yeah.
Because, for example, he rediscovered the Zanzibar leopard.
Yeah.
And he's discovered other things over the years. You notice as soon as I mention a leopard, Lily Lily Pops who wants to be a Black Panther when she grows up,
Mhm.
or comes in to join in what's happening. So, Richard and Lily, what do you think of Mr. Galante's theory that chupacabra sightings are actually thylacines?
I think that's very far-fetched indeed.
Forrest Galante attributes the chupacabra sightings to a pair of thylacines who were shipwrecked en route to the Bronx Zoo in the early 20th century.
Well, I know next to nothing about this case, so I can't really shed light on it, to be honest. What do you think?
I think it's nonsense, but
Yeah.
I don't like raining on somebody else's parade, especially
Sure.
when it's somebody like Forrest Galante, for whom I actually have quite a high respect.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one. I have no idea what to make of that.
Mm.
It says there were two. Now it says here there were two breeding pairs of thylacine bound for the Bronx Zoo, and the boat crashed into the shore.
Right.
And most of the animals escaped, including the two breeding pairs of thylacine. Well, I'd love it to be true. It'd be an absolutely fantastic thing if it were true. But I think it's not as far-fetched. I think it's absolutely bloody stupid, personally.
Yeah.
And that's followed by a New South Wales sighting of a thylacine reported from the 1970s by Mike Hardcastle.
Mike Hardcastle is a flying snake sub-editor.
He's good, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's like you. He comes up with all sorts of interesting stories that...
He's into steampunk. Or was into steampunk. Well, I'm not sure what steampunk is, but...
Yeah, I think I've read books of the genre. I think if I were young enough, I'd probably go off and pretend to be some sort of Victorian scientist from a alternate existence who has weird technology that has evolved from the steam engine rather than the internal combustion engine. But, I suppose when you look at it, me and Richard have been pretending to be Victorian scientists for years. So I can understand why you want to be a steampunk. So now, let's have a quick...
Well, can I quickly say, incidentally, if you Google cosmic polymath, you'll find a complete rundown of most issues of Flying Snake, the contents.
Oh, that's brilliant. Who did that?
Mike Hardcastle did that.
He's a
It's his website.
Jolly useful bloke to have around, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Finally, we have notes and queries, and I'm just going to skip through them. Dead woman found breathing in coffin.
I love those stories.
Where do you get this stuff?
I think maybe my friend Bob Skinner sent me that. Or it was in the media.
Then we have a new species of box jellyfish in Hong Kong, which interested me. But anything to do with Hong Kong natural history interests me. I don't know if you guys know this, but I've known Richard since we were both in Hong Kong when we were children, and the two of us have been studying sort of expat Hong Kong natural history ever since. And I think it's very interesting the way that Hong Kong mystery animals do come quite regularly. I think it's because Hong Kong is on sort of the cusp of the Northern Hemisphere and the tropics. And so you've got bits of two different huge weather systems and biotopes, which is why, as a result of it, you've got quite a few micro climates and micro populations of strange creatures.
And also, in the 21st century, there's a very active biodiversity group of students and academics who produced a magazine called Porcupine, which catalogued all the new discoveries out there.
I wish Porcupine still existed, because
It might exist online now.
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
No, it packed up about 8 years ago.
Right.
I strongly recommend you read Graham Reels's book, Confessions of a Hong Kong Naturalist.
So you recommended that to me a while ago. Yeah.
It's a brilliant book. It's very funny, and he was one of the founding editors of Porcupine.
Right.
It's funny, it's poignant, it's got all sorts of things you never knew about Hong Kong natural history.
Mm.
And there's a picture of him sat in an armchair cuddling a baby pangolin. So it doesn't get better than that.
Sounds good.
So I recommend that to everybody. Now we have snakes, Richard.
Yeah.
We have a flying snake in Georgia in 1903. This came from a newspaper called the Fitzgerald Enterprise on October the 31st, 1903. And because of the language and the way that this story was described in the original press cutting, I'm not going to read it out to you, but it does basically say that various people of colour, I think that's the way you're supposed to describe them these days, saw what looked like a snake over a yard in length flying about 20 feet in the air over the still branch, and they're still badly wrought up over the strange sight. The reptile, they say, made a hissing noise as it flew. Richard, what the hell do you make of that?
Sounds like something paranormal thing, because it's impossible for a snake to defy gravity and fly. So, your guess is as good as mine.
You and I have both been interested in flying snakes from around the world. They've been ones been reported to have either wings or back-like membranes at the side of their bodies, and this doesn't report anything. A fire snake in western Mexico. Tell me about that, Rick.
I can't remember much about that, except it was some sort of cryptid, some sort of new species at the time, mixed up with a bit of mythology.
I love stories like this. And now we have a story from Leeds, where apparently a mysterious animal, this is in 1912, so there's nobody around who's going to be able to corroborate this, and the mysterious animal described as being a weasel, a rat, or some strange creature from the east, attacked members of the family and household, including a maid at the house in question, who has been several times attacked by this creature. Professional rat catchers and others have been on its track, but without success. Does this remind you of anything?
It reminds me of Jeff, to be honest.
Yeah, I was thinking it reminds me of Jeff, and I wonder if this is where Jeff went and then decided he didn't like Leeds and he wanted to make it for the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
A 50-year-old tortoise found after 2 years on the land.
Where was that? Remind me where that was.
Doesn't say. It's in the paper I.
The I paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The tortoise is called Jemima, and it was found 5 miles away from where Jemima had originally lived before going on the run in 2020, leaving his 8-year-old daughter Beatrice devastated.
Does it say where?
No.
Oh, that's remiss of me, really.
And now we have something which I think I can answer as a giant moth in Swindon, because it is it's actually not one of the, it's not one of the three largest moths in the world, but it is the one with the biggest overall wingspan area. In terms of overall size, it's the Atlas moth, which is a giant silk moth from Southeast Asia. We used to see them occasionally in Hong Kong.
Mm.
And it was found in a garden in Swindon.
Mm.
Well, people are saying, experts shocked, but Atlas moths are quite readily available through the exotic bugs trade. And you can buy them, for example, from a company called Worldwide Butterflies that I used to visit when I was a kid, and it was at Lullingstone Castle and Silk Farm in Dorset. It's now run purely online from somewhere in North Cornwall, but they sell, they and lots of other people sell Atlas moths because they're such popular creatures for both school kids and for adults and hobbyists to rear. So I think that's perfectly sorted, that one.
Yeah.
But what's this? And this is from 1936. It happens in Leeds again. Really, Leeds is a very freaky place.
Hotspot of Fortean zoology.
Oh yes, especially after Richard and his spider activities in the mid-90s. But a guy called Mr. Tom Battle found what looked like a piece of rope. "Here you are, mate," somebody shouted as he passed it to him. "Take hold of this." Mr. Battle took hold, while suddenly the rope moved, and looking at it he found he was grasping a snake. It's about 2 foot long, greyish green with black specks towards the tail and is black underneath. I would say that it's probably a colour variant of a grass snake.
Did this happen in a built-up area?
Apparently it happened through the gate of the Destructor Yard on Armley Road at 8 a.m. in the morning.
Well, this is interesting because Charles Fort, in one of his books, talks about the repeated occurrences of snakes around Bloomsbury in London. I can't remember which of his books it is, but he definitely covers it, a story like that.
Well, I've always said, Richard, that you're the one with the wild talent.
Yeah.
It's interesting with grass snakes is that until very recently there was thought to be only one species of grass snake in Britain, but now 2 different colour variations have actually been found to be separate species. And so, if we're talking about a species that's quite easy to speciate, an animal that's quite good at speciating, this might have been at the beginnings of a new species. But we don't know. Then we go the rare marsh fertility found in Cumbria. Well, that's very nice because they used to be found all over the country, but during the 20th century they declined in numbers very, very much, and this is the first time, I believe, they've been found in Cumbria for decades. Now we have orcas, or killer whales as they were called in my youth, attacking boats.
And no one really knows why.
Nobody has any idea why. It's quite exciting, isn't it? It's the sort of thing that would make a really good B-movie.
Yeah.
Now we have a strange egg, which is dark chocolate in colour.
Yes, that is a strange story, and it had a kind of sandpapery texture to it.
I've always been fond of chickens as individuals, but I have no idea what would have caused this. There's a pink grasshopper in Wales.
Yes, this summer there was a wave of pink grasshopper sightings all over the UK.
I think that the pink grasshopper stories are fascinating, and it is apparently a colour variant of, they are apparently leucistic specimens of a fairly large species of British grasshopper, but why they turned up in such numbers this year I have no idea. And then we have an orange frog in Essex.
Yeah.
You emailed them, didn't you?
Yes, I did, and they referred to the archives section of their website, so I typed in the phrase red frog, orange frog, and came up with a whole lot of tree frog reports.
Which is very interesting because it is becoming more and more likely, the more we know about the subject, that the European green tree frog, which I think is still called Hyla arborea, is actually a native species to Britain, because this again is based on some work Darren Nash has done in the New Forest. But I think it'd be fantastic if they were a native British species. And then you found, and by the way, the tree frogs were 1887, the orange frog was 1959, and the pink frog, entombed in a tree, was 1939 in Belfast.
So there's a wide range of strangely coloured frogs all over the UK.
But the Belfast one was supposed to be entombed alive in a tree.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
And it only got woken up when the farmer started sawing the tree into planks.
Yeah.
And then we have a rare moth is rediscovered, reddish buff moths, which is really cool. And we have a really rather revolting picture of a six-legged skink.
Yes.
I like this. Hang on a second, I'm going to see if I can share it with you, because it is rather revolting. It's a bit of a noisome object. But you have a six-legged skink, which is found in Minnesota, and it was found this year. Then you have a record-sized hailstones. Bloody hell! A 19-centimetre hailstone found in Italy.
What I think that is several hailstones have been fused together, frozen together, and fallen. That's my theory.
Does that happen a lot?
I don't know if it happens a lot, but I think it does happen.
Okay, and now we have one of your favourite creatures, a black squirrel, and this was spotted scampering around Walworth, which is in London. Yes, it's in London. And I rather like black squirrel stories. Did I send you one the other day, a picture of a baby black squirrel?
No, you didn't.
Oh, I thought I did. I'll put it somewhere. I'll try and find it for you.
Thanks, John.
Then we have a big story about the super-duper Loch Ness investigation from the end of August, which we've already covered in this show. And then we have an alligator. How do you do this stuff, Richard?
I think is that the one in the stomach?
No, this is an alligator stuck in a tree.
That could be Bob Skinner, possible.
Well, I know Bob Skinner. He doesn't look anything like an alligator.
No, I mean I think he found the story.
It's from the Gravesend Reporter in 1890, and it apparently happened in Florida. And
right.
The alligator was 7 feet long.
Right, so it sounds like quite a young alligator.
And then we have, from this year, we have a large lizard, 3 feet long, which is probably a tegu found in the Channel Islands, which is so almost certainly a tegu, and which means it would have escaped. They were lovely lizards, tegus.
I've never seen one.
Oh, Max had a pair of them as pets.
Right, okay.
Then we have a lion in Tennessee
Oh yes, yeah.
in 1909.
I have a theory: the further back in time you go, the more strange the stories are.
Yes, I think you're right. And here we have one from 1948 of a peculiar sea monster described as a serpent or superfish, being like a long hairy snake with the face like an ape's.
Now I've written more about this. John asked me to write this up, do a bit of research, so I have. John will tell you where that's appearing. It won't be appearing in Flying Snake. It'll be appearing in one of John's journals.
It will probably be in Animals and Men. It's a very peculiar story.
Yeah. There are sightings of sea serpents around Vancouver. I think Cadbosaurus, or Caddy, is the name of the one off the west coast of Canada.
And next, they're coming thick and fast. 2 new species of mole are discovered in Turkey. Well,
Oh
that's
yes.
cool. And a peculiar moustache. What did I say, moustache? A peculiar giraffe. A baby giraffe without its usual distinctive markings at the Bright Zoo in Limestone, Tennessee. It's solid brown colour, and it is believed to be the only solid coloured giraffe without any of the reticulations on the planet. And coming to the end, we have an interesting letter to fate.
You missed out one, John.
No, I know, I'm going to come back to the end of that. We've got a letter to fate which was given to Richard about a weird moving rug which came from Garamangia Copra. And we have a woman. I love Bob Skinner. How does he find this stuff? He's almost weirder than you, Richard. A woman with a zoo in her stomach. From the Todd Morton Advertiser and Hebden Bridge Advertiser, 25th of April 1873.
Well, that wasn't what I was thinking of. You've missed out the earthquake lights in Morocco.
So I have. Okay, well, we've got that. I'll come back to it. There's a woman, or there was then a woman in Kentucky who kept a small menagerie stowed away in her digestive organs. She greatly grew emaciated and awfully voracious at the same time. And finally, for a dead mouse and a small live alligator, the rest of the collection is anxiously waited for, and her mouth has a resemblance to the door of Noah's Ark after the flood. Okay, Richard, please critique that story.
Sorry?
Critique that story for me. What do you think?
Fake news. I can't believe it. I think it's what they had a quiet news day and they wanted to fill in the quiet news with something exciting. So one of the clerks made that up.
But do you realise, Richard, you've just quoted Donald Trump, calling it fake news?
Well, I know, but it is fake news.
And with us, apparently, in the time of Akbar the Great, which I think was about 1500 from memory, frogs were regulated training in Akbar's time to hunt sparrows. And finally,
the back cover, remember?
I haven't finished. You haven't got to the lights and the...
Sorry.
What am I going to do with this boy? He tells me that I've forgotten the lights during the 2023 Morocco earthquake, and then he forgets them himself. There were reports of flashes of light seen during the 6.8 magnitude earthquake which hit the Atlas Mountains region on September the 8th, 2023. There are quite a few reports, aren't there, of earth lights in in conjunction with tectonic activities.
It's
So
the kind of thing that William Corliss would have recorded.
it's that kind of thing you and I record.
Yeah. And also, these lights were actually photographed or filmed.
And finally, have you seen the film?
I've just seen a still picture from it.
And finally, on the back cover, we have an absolutely gorgeous photograph showing what happens when, I always try to get these onto the screen, what happens when a mummy poplar hawk-moth and a daddy poplar hawk-moth in Macclesfield love each other very much and get it on. It's an absolutely beautiful picture. It's got absolutely no fortune significance whatsoever, but it's a lovely picture.
And my friend Cassia, my Polish friend, who used to print flying snake, I don't do it anymore at that place, but she has been printing flying snake for at least 15 years.